So now that my meatloaf is pretty much ready, I just have to cook it, obviously. I'm going to make my mashed potatoes. This is not from a recipe. This is just my own concoction, but I'll show you how easy it is to just veganize mashed potatoes. So I've got 6 Yukon Gold potatoes. This is my potato of choice, but sometimes I like to use red potatoes when I'm making mashed potatoes. And what I like to do is I like to leave the skins on when I make mashed potatoes. Yukon Gold is good for that because they have really nice skins. If the skins weren't nice, then I would peel them. So I'm just going to chop these up into small pieces. And remember, when you're making something like mashed potatoes, the smaller the pieces, the faster they'll cook. So I'm going to cut these up into fairly small squares. Okay, that's the last of my potato. I actually started to run out of room in here, so I used one less potato than I was originally planning on, but this is plenty of potatoes for 4 people. So now I'm just going to cover this with cold water. All right, so I've put enough water in there to cover the potatoes. And now I'm just going to put the stove on high, and I'm going to boil these until the potatoes are fork tender. And again, the smaller the pieces, the faster this will take. So my potatoes have boiled, and I drained them, and I've put them back in my pot. Now all I'm going to do is add all my stuff to make the mashed potatoes. And I'm going to be using Baicel vegan margarine. And this is, of course, instead of butter. And again, I make this differently every time, so I don't have exact measurements. I just kind of go with how I feel. And then instead of milk, I'm going to use some soy milk. I'm going to put some salt and some pepper in there. And then since these are roasted garlic mashed potatoes, I've got here a head of garlic that I roasted earlier today. And I'm going to use the whole thing because once garlic is roasted, it actually is not as potent. It's almost kind of sweet. I'm just going to scoop all these buds out of here. Okay, so I've got the whole head of garlic in there now. One other thing I like to add to my mashed potatoes are dried chives. So I'm just going to add some of those in there. And with my mashed potatoes, I don't actually use a hand masher. What I use is an electric beater. So, just going to get my handle around here. I'm basically going to beat these with my mixer until all the chunks are out and they're nice and smooth. Well, I think that about does it. There you have some beautiful, creamy, smooth, roasted garlic mashed potatoes. They smell amazing. I can't wait to eat these. But again, my guests aren't arriving for a little while, so I will just put a lid on this once it's cooled down a little bit, and before we're ready to eat, I'll heat them up again. So next, we'll move on to the dessert. Okay, now we're moving on to the dessert, and I'm making blueberry buckle. This is something I've never made before, so I don't even know what it's supposed to turn out like. So the original recipe is as follows. 1/4 cup butter softened, 3/4 cup sugar, 1 egg, 2 cups all-purpose flour, 2 teaspoons baking powder, a 1/4 teaspoon salt, 1/2 cup milk, 2 cups fresh blueberries. The topping is 2/3 of a cup sugar, 1/2 cup all-purpose flour, 1/2 teaspoon ground cinnamon, and 1/3 of a cup cold butter. Okay, so the first thing that the directions say to do is to cream the butter and sugar together. And so once again, I'm going to be using Earth Balance vegan buttery sticks. I just find these very convenient for baking because they are in 1/2 cup sticks, so it's quite easy to measure what you need, and they mimic butter really well. And then I've just got some white sugar here. And I'm going to cream them with my hand blender. Okay, I've creamed my margarine and sugar together, and now the recipe says to add the egg and beat it in. Now, this time to replace the egg, I'm going to be using applesauce, and I've used a 1/4 cup of unsweetened applesauce. Okay, so my applesauce is beaten in there now. Now it says to combine the flour with the salt and baking powder. So I'm just going to give those a little stir. And then I'm supposed to add this to the cream mixture, alternating with the soy milk. I'm just going to stir this time. It doesn't say whether to beat or stir, so I'm just going to stir. Okay, wow, that's quite thick. So now it says to fold in the blueberries. Now, I didn't have fresh blueberries today, but I did have some frozen ones, so I'm going to use frozen ones that I just left out to thaw. Now, this might turn my mixture a little bit purple, but that's okay. Okay, so I've stirred or folded my blueberries into the cake batter. Now, as you can see, it's quite purple, but I've made blueberry muffins before where this has happened to me, and then when I bake them, they don't turn out purple. Either way, though, if it turns out purple, I have a purple dessert. As long as it tastes good, that's all that matters. So now I'm going to put it into an 8 by 8 inch greased baking dish. And now there is a topping that goes on this, which is some flour, sugar, cinnamon, and more of the cold vegan margarine. So it says to combine the flour, sugar, and cinnamon in a bowl. And then to cut the butter in. So I find the best thing to cut margarine or butter into flour is a good old-fashioned pastry cutter. So the directions say to cut this in until the mixture is crumbly. All right, I'd say that's pretty crumbly. So now it just says to sprinkle this on top of the batter. Well, I have to say, this looks pretty interesting. Should be pretty good served with some vegan ice cream. So now this is ready to go into the oven, and I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees, and it's supposed to cook for 40 to 45 minutes or until a toothpick inserted in the center comes out clean. So as you can see, my blueberry buckle is done. It took a little bit longer than the recipe stated. The recipe said about 40 to 45 minutes. I found that after 45 minutes, my skewer was not coming out clean. I ended up putting it back in the oven for another 20 minutes before my skewer came out clean. Anyway, this looks delicious, and I can't wait to try it after dinner tonight. So we've come to the end of our lesson on veganizing, and I've shown you how to take non-vegan recipes and make them vegan. We did an appetizer, a main course, and a dessert. So I showed you how to take things, and just by simply substituting or taking things out here and there, you can take a traditional recipe that you're used to making and make it vegan. I know that cooking for vegans can sometimes be a very daunting task, but there are so many great products out on the market today that makes it really easy. And I hope that at the end of this video, you now can take one of your old recipes and make it vegan.